Well, tonight's meeting we're going to get started. A quick reminder for everyone who is just now coming on, if you want to pass this along to anybody you may know who wants to join us, the sign-on process is very simple for the Rotary E-Club. It's http://rotary.webex.com. No password is needed. However, if you're doing a makeup, we ask that you sign in with your name and your club's name so that we can note that and pass along a makeup membership or makeup note if we need to. Of course, we always like to highlight the Flash, the District 5810 newsletter. There are many issues online that can be found at www.rotary5810.org. And the very good news that we have now is we're going to hand the presentation over to George Rachetsky. And give me just a minute while I pull his PowerPoint up. We're going to be talking tonight about being a vibrant club. And I'm going to go back to slideshow presentation mode. Perfect. Now, George, if you would, if you can direct the information to the camera. If you want help driving, I will do so. If you want to take it over, please feel free.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. What I'd like to talk about tonight is being a vibrant club. This is a document that you can get online at Rotary.org. It says Be a Vibrant Club. It is one of the best Rotary publications that I've seen, and it asks a number of good questions along the way. So let me just walk you through what those 10 best practices are. And those 10 best practices are the pathway to vibrancy. First, having a strategic plan. That's where we also set the long-range goals. And as we have been working with clubs in the district, we call this the gateway process. It's a strategic visioning process, 3 two-hour meetings, and we've got a team of facilitators trained to come and help clubs do that. So if the E-Club would be interested in doing that, we could come in and facilitate those meetings for you as well. The annual goals, which is designed to then support the long-range goals, and the document is called the Planning Guide for Effective Rotary Clubs, also available at Rotary.org. And those annual goals are divided up among the 5 standing committees, which I'll get to in a little bit, plus leadership development. So there's 6 factors that are in the annual plan. The third step on that pathway to vibrancy is getting members involved in the planning. So they're involved in the strategic planning, they're involved in the action planning for the current year, and they are informed about progress and challenges and changes through periodic club assemblies. So that third step really is about involvement in planning. It's not just done by a few folks, and informing of progress, issues, challenges as they come up. The fourth one is communications, and best practices within Rotary clubs is that members oftentimes don't hear everything during a meeting, particularly where there's a meal. Folks will be eating, and so it's important to have multiple ways to communicate. And one of the things we've been looking at is if a picture's worth 1,000 words, how much is a video worth? And we should have videos in multiple places for multiple messages, short, concise, powerful, and they're easy to do. So communicating with members. The second piece of the communications is to communicate with district leaders, to participate at district events, to reach out to others through programs like Relay, which is our Rotary Leadership Institute offered by 5810, where it's a shared weekend experience, arrival Saturday 8 a.m., departure on Sunday at 3 p.m., 3:30, and you will be developing relationships with folks in other clubs. which provides a great network for ideas and joint projects and such. So let's move on to a question. And it's not something you necessarily can answer right now, but what is your club's compelling vision? It's one of the things that comes out of the strategic visioning process, something that attracts interest, that attracts members, that attracts potential members, that gives you something big to look at. When we started the RELI program, the Rotary Leadership Institute, back in 2005, we set as our vision to re-energize Rotary around the world. And as we thought about it, that could keep us active until we're not around anymore. So it's a vision that is big. It has great prospects for impacting the world. And we think that we do better when we are developing good leaders. Which brings me to that fifth one, continuity in leadership year to year. One of the things that Rotary has really, it's both a plus and a minus, the change out of leadership each year. So new club president every year keeps some freshness in it. But by the same token, by doing it year by year, we lose momentum. So someone changes out and we lose the process, we lose the momentum that we built up, we start some new things, we get rid of some old things, but it's not necessarily being done in a strategic way. So developing a leadership continuity, we're a small club in Coppell, but we came up with an idea of a president's advisory team, and it's the immediate past two presidents, the current president, the president-elect, and the president-elect to be. So it covers 5 years. And we found they only meet 4 times a year, and they have the wisdom of the past, the possibilities of the future, but it's an advisory team to the sitting president. So the president is making the decisions. They can be sounding board, they can be suggestions, and 2 years after we had set up the advisory team, we had our first president-elect to go to PETS, and she said that she learned more in those advisory team meetings, so that she was more than prepared for PETS, which we thought was a pretty amazing outcome. The next one, number 6, is customize our club bylaws to reflect our club operations. Many clubs have old bylaws, and I am not a bylaws person, but I discovered when we went to the new leadership structure in our club, we actually operated for 3 years under the new structure before the club said, well, why don't we change our bylaws to come in line with that? It seems to be working, we ought to go ahead and acknowledge it. But in doing our bylaws, we also discovered that there were several things like providing leaves of absence that Rotary permitted, but our club had not done before. So this was a new thing, and we have used the leave of absence, and it's ended up retaining 2 folks that otherwise would have left, gone away, being out of sight is out of mind. So we utilize the tool, it helps, and it's made a big difference. Number 7 is providing regular fellowship opportunities, friendship opportunities. And we've discovered that you really don't build better friendships in a 1-hour meeting. It really does require interaction. We were a breakfast club, and we started having quarterly dinner meetings. And we now have started a satellite meeting time on Wednesday nights. And more of our members are coming to the happy hour meetings because they are more conducive to building friendships, developing those relationships. So that regular opportunities is to plan out social events, plan out hands-on service projects, because when we're working together, we're also building relationships. So that's a really key piece of it. Number 8 is actively involving all members. We want members to be involved in running the club, in improving the club, in getting program speakers, in developing project ideas, being project leaders, and getting others involved in our projects, not just Rotary members. The next rhetorical question, what is your club's leadership development process? How are you getting your leaders ready? When I did this at our district spring training, most clubs don't have a leadership development process. So certainly budgeting and planning out regular really attendance from each club is one way of doing that. But another is Rotary University, which got started last year. And the folks' feedback has been, when I know more about the traditions of Rotary, I have a better understanding of how things work and how I can access the resources and guidance. So be attentive to how are we learning to be more effective leaders within Rotary and within our lives. Regular, consistent training is number 9 on the best practices list. And training in club officer roles is important. And this year we are developing webinars for each of the club roles. And Ian announced at our district celebration, or our district training, spring training, that we're also going to have advisory teams who have graduated from Relay. And we'll have an advisory team for the presidents, for the president-elects, for the secretaries, for the treasurers, for the sergeant-at-arms, so that we'll have a team of 5 or 6 that will be that advisory group. They're not running a district agenda, they're running an agenda of how can we be helpful to the folks that are in those roles this year. So that at the end of the year, we'll also have a needs assessment, understanding what the needs that are coming up so that we can incorporate that into our district training to help address those needs going forward. And finally, the committees to fit operations. And these are the 5 committees that were introduced by Rotary back in 2007. All new clubs have been established with these 5 standing committees. All established clubs were grandfathered, said you don't have to go to this or not. And what I have found is that the planning guide for effective Rotary clubs is built around these 5 committees. So if your club isn't structured that way, that we're utilizing a framework that doesn't fit. So adjusting this, and this would be an update to the bylaws, it's focused on running the club, on membership, not just attracting. Ian had an interesting statistic that he shared. He said that we have recruited 1.2 million Rotarians over the past 7 years. And you know what the current membership is in Rotary worldwide? 1.2 million. So we've got this, we don't have a recruiting problem, we have a retention problem. And we really need to focus on how do we engage folks in a way that they feel that the time they're spending is valuable, meaningful, and that they're making a difference. And when folks feel like they're making a difference, they're willing to stay with something. If they don't, we're all busy folks and say, I'll go someplace else where I can feel more significant. Public relations, and the key piece there is we can say we want more Rotary stuff, more Rotary billboards, more Rotary public service announcements, but the truth is that it's what we do at a local level that people get. So when our pictures are in the paper, not about us, but about the people who are benefiting from our service projects, that's a human interest story. That's what people say. Oh, Rotary, that's the group that's helping to feed the hungry, or that's the group that's helping to provide gardens for elder senior centers so that they have something to do in their spare time. But public relations isn't about telling people more about Rotary. Public relations is about informing people of the good works that Rotary is doing locally. Service projects, the more hands-on ones that we can do, is a real key piece that particularly newer generation folks have said. They want to do the hands-on projects. So they want to be at the North Texas Food Bank sorting food. That's why Habitat for Humanity is so popular, because they provide that hands-on periodic opportunity. And then finally, the Rotary Foundation, which is a marvelous structure because all the monies that we contribute are left alone for 3 years. The interest from that pays for all of the administrative costs. So 100% of the monies that are contributed to the foundation go to the projects. And half of it comes back into the districts that sent it, and half of it goes to the World Fund to fund the international projects. So it's a very, very powerful piece. And having a committee structure in each club around those. Now, the one that I find fascinating, it's just I guess it's my bias. In the planning guide, there's 6 categories, one for each of these 5, plus leadership development. So leadership development doesn't have a committee. And we realized that when you don't have anybody attending to something, it doesn't get addressed. So we made it the purview of our president's advisory team. The 2 past immediate presidents, current president, president-elect, and president-elect to be. So those 5 folks are the leadership development team, and are looking at how are we developing the leaders in our club, how are we getting folks engaged around things that they really enjoy doing, and how can we help them get additional experience through district projects that can be helpful back in our own club. This last rhetorical question about collaborative partners, as I've gone around and talked to clubs, I've asked a common question. Do you have to be a Rotarian to work on a Rotary service project? The answer is no. But when we talk about attracting new members, what do we say? Bring them to a meeting. And I'd like to substitute bring them to a service project. Help them get a sense of what we do, build the relationship around the service, and over time that relationship will turn into someone who says, I want to become a member of the Rotary group, I'd like to join in. The collaborative partner piece, though, is what organization are you collaborating with so that you are broadening your reach? And in Coppell, we established a relationship with the Coppell YMCA, and we have several Rotary folks that are on the Y board, and we have several Y board members who ended up joining the Rotary Club. And we have a program on drug and alcohol abuse that we sponsor. We do some extra funding for that. So it's been something where we really are collaboratively building a bigger impact in the city. So that collaborative piece means that they bring resources, they have a communications network that can greatly expand our ability to connect with more folks. And while I'm not a documents guy, I have discovered that Rotary has put together a lot of good resource material. And as I'm looking at this now, I realize start off with Be a Vibrant Club. Go to Rotary.org, type in Be a Vibrant Club, click the search, and it will bring up the, sorry, I didn't bring my color copy, but it is an 8-page document that is exceptionally well done because it asks a number of questions, and just use it as a working guide. You'll be able to tap each of these 10 steps to a vibrant club. The strategic planning guide, another one that's on there is the best web design practices, leadership development guide to local clubs, the recommended bylaws, and the Rotary Fellowships Handbook and Communities in Action, providing ideas on service projects. So the documentation is there, and I think that each club has an opportunity through their assistant governor to be able to access virtually any resource within the district that could be helpful to helping each club make progress. So are there some questions that I might be able to answer? How much time do we have?
We have, well, we can take as much time as you want. There's about 12 minutes or so left in our normal programming.
Okay. Well, then let me just walk you through a simple challenge. Thinking differently. By adding a single line, turn the following into an 8. How do we do that? It's a Roman numeral 7, so we just add an I. And we've got 8. Easy. By adding only a single line, turn the following into a 6. And I've got 4 people now looking at it. How do you do it, guys?
I don't count. Because
You were at the...
where I was
okay.
this weekend. I don't
Oh,
count.
you already.
I don't
I've
count.
already seen it.
Okay, you see the challenge, and this is it's a great illustration. By showing you Roman numeral 7, we're all thinking
Can it be a
Roman
curvy
numerals.
line? Can I add a curvy line? Like
Sure.
an S?
Like an S, and it makes it 6.
There we go.
Another way you could do it, it's 1 times and do the number 6, and that equals 6. A third way of doing it is take a horizontal line, draw it through the middle of the X, and above the line you have 4, and below the line you have an upside down 6. So there are actually 3 ways to do it. But our problem in thinking differently is that we're in a habit. So our clubs look at things in a particular way. It's our habitual way of looking at it. So we're stuck. And this says, no, we can be much more creative than we are. So we can do an S to make 6. We can do 1 times a number 6 to be 6. Or we do the line through the middle and we have an upside down 6. And still stay with the Roman numerals. So our idea about being creative, being innovative, I applaud the E-Club because you are doing something that is innovative, that's a change from the traditional, and yet you are helping connect a much broader group of folks by doing it this way. So you're actually setting a pace where more and more people can connect virtually, and part of that connection allows us to be in touch, thinking about things together, so that we can then get together and act on them as well. I taught a program at SMU in the evening MBA program, and one of the things we talked about was creativity. And there are 3 measures of creativity. The first one is fluency, and fluency is taking a glass and saying, come up with 100 different ways to use that glass. And it could be a cutter to cut cookies. You could put flowers in it, make it a vase. So there are lots of different things, and that's fluency, taking something and finding multiple uses of it. The second one is about flexibility, and that's taking something from one context and applying it in another. And the third one is originality. And at the assembly, I did ask how many people had a patent, and there were about 3 or 4 hands that went up in the room of 300 folks. So originality is rather rare, and those who have it, I applaud them. I don't. But what I discovered was that fluency seems to be easy for us. Originality is out of reach for most of us. So the flexibility is the one that gives us the most promise, but it's also the most difficult. Because it says, I'm in another group. It's a group at church. They do things this way. Well, I remember that. That's the church group. But when we ask, what do they do to make their meetings more enjoyable, more fun? Well, we don't even think about that, but if we ask, we say, oh, there's something that we do right at the beginning of our meetings. That's something we could do at the beginning of our Rotary meetings. So that we're actually taking an idea out of one context and putting it into another. And I've got a couple examples of how, I guess as human beings, we're wired to remember things in context. So at the COP-LY, I'm now the chairman of the board of management, and I brought up the idea of doing good news bucks to help share good news about what's going on in people's families and with other volunteers. Well, Gail Westerver, who's one of our members in the Rotary Club, has been at the Y, and she said, why did I never think of that? Because in our Rotary Club, we have what we call Happy Bucks, and it's sharing good news about. So I just called it something different, the Good News Board Bucks, and the monies that we raise go to the Partners Campaign, which is a fundraiser to help families in need so they can access the Y programs. So the idea was happy bucks at the Rotary Club, good news bucks at the wide board. And Gail said, why didn't I think of that? And she's been in Rotary now for 6 or 7 years. But it's that context. I think of it as that's what I do at Rotary, or that's what I do at church, or that's what I do. And for me, it was in the Boy Scouts. I went through Boy Scout training at a district level, and we were formed into a patrol, and one of our challenges was to come up with a positive adjective for each of our names. And the patrol members gave you suggestions. And the patrol members suggested to me that my name should be Jubilant George. And they said, because whatever the circumstances, you're trying to do things in a positive way, making progress in spite of the rain or the sleet or the snow or whatever. So I accepted that, and I became Jubilant George. But I was working in public accounting. Do you think I went into the office and told them about Jubilant George? No. When I started my own consulting business, do you think I told those potential clients and new clients about Jubilant George? No. And it wasn't until I got involved in Rotary and went to the Really Weekend that I realized that I am Jubilant George. And I don't need to be somebody else. I don't need to try to fit in some other way. So I have been bringing that Jubilant George and the positive adjectives into Rotary functions. And when we get them, it can be Magnificent Matt, or Crazy Corey, or Caring Corey, or Compassionate Corey. But you see, everybody right now in the room is smiling. There's an energy around that because we're looking for something positive. We're finding things that can convey something about each of us. And it becomes a way of building a different relationship. We're human beings. We're working together. We ought to have fun. We ought to enjoy what we're doing. So creativity, I thought, was originality. And since I couldn't be original, I couldn't do anything new. And then I discovered that flexibility says, take an idea from someplace, put it into practice someplace else. And you can continue to create newness and energy and progress wherever you are. So I would conclude with everything that we do in our clubs, in our families, in our communities, in our organizations. And this is a quote from Pat Hagerty, former CEO at Texas Instruments. And he said, you can change without improving, but you cannot improve without changing. So my encouragement to all of us is to look at what we have and build from where we are to make progress, to improve, do things differently. Some things will work great, do more of it. Some things won't work very well, stop it. But continue to look at how can we make progress together to make a bigger impact in the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any questions either online or with the our studio audience?
The silence is deafening.
It may take a minute for some of the ones online to be able to unmute. And I know, Ian, I think you've got yours to where you might be typing questions, but feel free to let us know, anybody, if you have a quick question. Corey, anybody in the audience here?
The list of resources on the last slide or two on the original presentation, are those in that presentation too? They will be there if we go to that site. Will that list also be there as a slide if you go to the Rotary website and pull this up?
It sounds to me like if it isn't, it should be.
Yeah.
And those titles, when you go to Rotary.org, you just go to the search window, type in that title, click it, and it'll take you to the link so you can download it.
Very good. If there are no more questions, then we will conclude with the four-way test. The four-way test of Rotary: of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third,
will it build goodwill or better friendships?
and fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you very much. We conclude this evening's program.